Welcome to Decide to Transform. You made it to level 2, deeper questions leading to deeper answers. I'm Tomas Garza, and I'm here to help you decide to transform. I'll be setting the pace for the process to support your unfolding. Learn and commit to a practice that brings simplicity and awareness of what is ready to be released. Join me now and allow the experience of a deeper sense of love. Well, hello, and welcome to Decide to Transform. I am your host, Tomas Garza, and I'm excited today to bring you a really wonderful show that's full of great information for you. It's full of great practical tips that you can apply in your life, and it's a very central theme of everything that I talk about in every arena that I actually step up and teach in, whether it's meditation or as a podcast host, as an author, and that is the power of decision. We'll be looking at some detail today about the power of decision, the primacy of decision, and why this is such a central theme in my book, Decide, in this podcast, and in life, because it applies to every single area of life. We have a couple of very interesting general questions that we'll answer on the air today that I get from people from all walks of life. And we have a very fun, specific listener question that I think many of you will relate to. So you will want to stick around for that. This is Decide to Transform on Om Times Radio. So let's talk a little bit about why decision, why is this so critically important? And before we get into the elements of a decision and how that plays into your life, because it does play into your life. This is for everybody. This is not just for someone else. It's not for your neighbor. It's not for your Aunt Harriet. This is everybody that we're talking about here. It is really best, in my view, to view it as an example. So let me illustrate why a decision is so important with a simple example. And we'll take an example from the arena of physical health. And that is someone that wants to join a gym. They wish to get healthy. They wish to develop more strength, more cardiovascular endurance, just better fitness overall, possibly weight loss, but they just want to be in a better, more fit, healthier state. So they go to a gym and they purchase a membership. All right. The person that has not decided that they want to get fit will have doubts the entire time. They will have doubts when they approach the person at the counter that sells and describes the memberships. They will have doubts the first time or two that they go to the gym. And then what happens a lot, and maybe you can relate to this because perhaps this is something that you have done in your life, after the first 2, maybe 3 times, maybe a week or 2, the gym membership and the workouts begin to lose their appeal. Without having made a decision to get fit, then it's very easy to listen to all of our habitual stories that are limitations that we place on ourselves and quit. But who hasn't donated to a gym? By donate, I mean buy a 6-month or a year membership and go 3 or 4 times and never go back. And this can be with yoga classes, this can be with meditation, this can be with trying to lose weight if you're looking to lose weight. Without the decision, you dabble. And that's what happens to us as human beings, is without making a conscious decision, we don't sustain momentum. And that is the number one reason why decision is so critically important. So on the show today, we're talking about the primacy of decisions. And what I mean by that is we're actually making a decision every moment of every day, whether we think we are or whether we realize it or not. That we're actually making a decision, a choice, a conscious choice, whether we realize it or not. And you might find yourself thinking, well, no, that doesn't really sound correct to me. I'm often not aware of it myself. And I would say, well, that's actually partly true because, as we all know, people, human beings, go through so much of their lives on autopilot. We go through our lives unconsciously, really, subconsciously. You can look at people walking around at a store, for example, and they look like they're in a coma, right? Maybe you feel like you're in a coma right now. I don't know. But there's so much going on in our lives that we just do habitually on autopilot. And we do often live a lot of our lives in that space. And that is one of the reasons why practices like meditation, like yoga, anything that helps you create an awareness of your mental and emotional state, why all that is so important is because you begin to realize by practicing and committing to a practice, deciding to commit to a practice, that there's so much going on under the surface that's driven by our habitual tendencies. It's driven by our prior conditioning, and people are just running around like zombies, and we literally are. That may sound harsh, and okay, well, it is. We're running around like zombies a lot of the time, yet what we retain is the power to change that. It may not feel like it, but it's true. So I invite you today to entertain the notion that you have the power of choice. We will come back to this. A decision is very practical, and what it does for you is very profound because it takes away the dabbling. If you make a conscious decision, let's go back to the example of getting physically fit. If you make that conscious decision, then the limiting stories, these little voices of, oh, this is a waste of time. Oh, yeah, you're just not strong enough. I don't feel like it today. I don't have time to go to the gym today. I've got other things going on. All of those voices will always come up, but a decision will help block those off. Doesn't mean they won't come up, but when they do, you'll be ready to deal with that. And I can tell you from experience that having made a decision, they do not come up as often, though it takes limitations off the menu. And that means you create freedom, you create space for yourself to quit playing small. Because that is what transformation is all about. It's stopping our limitations and our habitual patterns and tendencies that keep us stuck, that keep us small, that keep us boxed in, limited, and stifled, quite frankly, stifled. So, an example of a decision. Well, about a year ago, I made a decision to write a book, and it sounded a little far-fetched at the time. I knew that I had information that I wanted to get out there based on years of experience in meditation and frankly, just in life with all kinds of jobs and all kinds of jobs that I was very ill-suited for in the end, where I just went through the motions and didn't really connect. I wasn't aligned to it. I was just sort of going through a grind. Maybe you can relate to that. People do that all the time, and I'm sure at some point in life, anybody who's made a conscious transformation can look back and say, okay, during this period of time, I was really asleep at the wheel. I was driving a car, so to speak, not paying attention to anything that I was doing, and I nearly drove it off the cliff. Well, and if you catch last week's show, that almost happened to me. It was an auto accident that kind of helped spur me out of that. But a year ago, I made a decision that I was going to write a book, and to me that signified stepping up in the world and sharing information with people, no longer keeping the experience and the things that I had learned to myself. So it's teaching, yes, but it's stepping up to me and taking things to a whole different level. Now, without a decision to write a book, if you've ever written one, you'll realize, of course, you can attest to the fact that it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of hand wringing. It's a lot of looking at a page full of stuff and thinking, this is horrible. I didn't write that, and if I did, then it's horrible. I want to throw this away. I want to delete the file. I want to smash the computer against the wall. I hope not. I never had that experience, but I did look at things and edit them and spend many, many months on it. It's a process. It's a very, very long process. So without the conscious decision to do it, then you write maybe a few paragraphs or a chapter or two and then put it away for what we say in common parlance, a rainy day. And maybe the day will come when you pick the thread back up. Maybe it will not. And for most of us, it really does not tend to come. In the gym membership example, if you stop going, then it's harder. Excuse me, recovering from a cold today. So if you stop going to the gym, then it's harder. Pardon me, I'm live, you get the coughs for free. So it's harder to reconnect the thread, so to speak. All right. So moving forward, what I want to do is, well, recapture my voice, obviously. So always the possibility with a cold when you do a live show, but maybe you have a cold right now. It's December, and I know a lot of you are excuse me, in a very, very cold climate, actually. I'm sitting on the beach in our beach house in Mexico. So it's not cold, but I still have the virus. So what can you do? Let's talk about general question number one that people often ask me. And we'll talk about this, and we'll come back to this after we take our first break. But a general question that I often get from people is, okay, well, I can't decide, okay? I cannot decide. So what do I do? What do I do? I cannot decide. And what I see happen is something that's all too common, and that is people becoming paralyzed. What happens is if people can't make a decision is they're often afraid. They're often afraid of making the wrong choice. They're afraid of messing up, and that fear of messing up, of making the wrong choice, leads to inaction. And what I want to say is that if you've found yourself in that situation, I hope that you've been able to correct yourself. And if you're in it now, just know that not choosing is the wrong choice. It is much better, much, much better to make a decision, any decision, and go forward with it than to make none at all. Because what happens when we don't make a decision is nothing, right? Nothing happens. We stay where we are. We stay stuck, and we stay in what we like to consider our comfort zone, yet whose comfort zone is really comfortable? And if you're listening to Om Times Radio, then there's got to be something inside you that's saying, okay, this comfort zone is not very comfortable to me. I want to live my life differently. I want to step into my power. I want to live more abundantly. I want to be aligned. I want to have work or relationship with purpose. And not making a decision has us in a really, really horrible situation in the end because we lack confidence, right? That is not an abundant place to be, is lacking confidence and being afraid of stepping out because you might make the wrong choice. So the question that I would ask is, what is more difficult, staying where you are or stepping out and maybe making a choice that you have to correct later? Might make a decision, any decision, and you can recorrect later, take a different thread, or do you want to simply stay exactly where you are? Again, any decision is better than none at all. So when we come back from the break, we'll look at the anatomy of a decision and take a couple of really, really interesting questions from people. You are listening to Decide to Transform on Om Times Radio.
Connecting you with the best of the conscious minds in the world. Om Times Radio. IOM FM.
Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organisation, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Connect at omtimes.com. Om Times, creating a more conscious lifestyle.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on Om Times Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Hi, I'm Tomas Garza, author of Decide and host of Decide to Transform on Om Times Radio. I want to ask you, if you want something in life, have you decided on it? If not, you'll listen to a limiting story about yourself. You will say you can't, you're too old, too young, etc. Decide to transform in life. Learn what you can choose to believe instead of your limiting stories. Decide. Available now in paperback and ebook.
Opiates has taken everything and everyone I've ever loved away from me. Everything.
I blew my ankle out and I got prescribed pain pills by my doctor.
If making my detox public is going to help somebody, I'm all for it. So I just wish I would have had a warning.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth. A message from Truth, the Ad Council, and ONDCP.
Welcome back. You're listening to Decide to Transform on Om Times Radio. I'm your host, Tomas Garza. And before the break, we were looking at some of the main reasons why making a decision is so important. So at this point here in the show, what I'd like to do is go through the anatomy of a decision. And there are 4 critical points that I want to address in this segment, and I will go through those one at a time. During this segment, we will also have a couple of very interesting questions. One's a specific question from a listener that I think many of you will relate to, and another general question that's very, very important, and it raises some considerations that when we're swept away in our daily lives, carried away with our job, work, the kids, whatever it is, the bills, exercise routines, whatever it is, we don't often think about this. So this is a very, very good investment in yourself today, wherever you are, or if you're going to listen to the replay, or if you're going to listen to this once it's on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to the show. This is a very, very good investment in yourself and your own personal development. There is a lot in this for you, because we'll consider some things that you don't always think about that will help you, because they're often flying under our radar, under the surface, and they get ignored in life. And I'm going to point them out so that you'll be aware of those. So as far as the anatomy of a decision goes, the very first part is that a decision blocks off other unhelpful options. In other words, it helps you with your focus. Another way that I've heard making a decision described is that it takes the clutter off the menu. It takes negativity off the menu. What I would say is that it takes limiting stories off the menu. And if they're not off and gone, then they will be less prominent. They won't shout at you as loudly. And you'll find that with making a decision, you don't pay attention to the voice in your head that says, I'm not good enough for this. I don't have time for this. If you make a decision, then yes, let's go back to the gym example. Yes, you do have time, because you've made time. You've blocked 2 hours out of your schedule. So yes, in fact, the calendar says you have the time. iCal says you have it. Therefore, you have it. You've blocked it off. And the voice that says, no, I've got something else to do. Well, having made a decision, it becomes easier. And you can actually build momentum this way. This is how massive transformation happens. This is how people take themselves from stuck to unstuck. And you may have done this in some aspect of your life. You may be looking to do it, but this is how it works. The decision blocks off other options. It helps you with your focus, which helps you to continue to act again and again every day to create the momentum that you need that finds you, in the end, a transformed person. So, point number 2, the anatomy of a decision, is that, in fact, there are really only 2 decisions to make. This is something that I think will really, really help you, because every moment of every day we have a choice. It seems like we have millions, and I do mean millions, of different options to choose from. If you're watching TV or Netflix, you have hundreds of options. So which do you choose? It's no wonder a lot of us sit around at night, around our computers or our television sets, thinking, God, there's nothing on. What am I going to do? There's nothing on. This is boring. I don't know what to watch. There's just so many choices. It seems like we have millions of choices. Going down a supermarket aisle, you have millions of choices, and unless you're laser focused on 1 or 2 items, then it can be a bit overwhelming. It can be daunting. But in reality, there are really only 2 things that we can choose from. And the power of this is the one we choose is the one that we believe will govern all of our lives, and we're actually making an argument for the choice that we make. So really, there are only 2 decisions. So here is general question number 2, which is one that I often get. And what do you mean? The question is, what do you mean there are only 2 choices? It seems like there's so much complication in life. There's so much variation. There's so much as far as gradations go, and layers, and different subdivisions, divisions, subdivisions, everything, particles, and everything broken down into all kinds of parts that appear differently. So let's back all the way up. Because transformation is about backing all the way up and bringing some awareness to your daily life so that you can number one, figure out what's going on, and then you can, secondly, and then and only then, make changes. If you're not aware of the problem, then how can you attempt to solve it? You can't, right? If you're not aware of the problem, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to bring any lasting solutions. You might bring a temporary Band-Aid solution, like going to the gym 2 or 3 times, feeling okay, feeling accomplished, and then just letting your membership lapse after 6 months of automatic payments because, yeah, you didn't have the time to come back to that example. So what do you mean there are only 2 choices? Well, ultimately, we have 2 choices. One keeps us stuck, the other moves us forward. And you can insert the words that you like here, but we are either choosing our limitations or we're choosing our best self. We are either choosing love or we're choosing fear. We're choosing our highest self or we're choosing the ego. Right? We're choosing God, we're choosing the ego. If you want to insert a different word in there, we're choosing our higher self, or we're choosing ego, which is separation. It's limitation. It's a lack of connection and cutting ourselves off from others. It's isolation. And we all know what that means. It means frustration. It means fear. It can mean anger and rage and lashing out and on down the line. So every moment of every day, we have a choice to make. So do we choose transformation or do we choose our limitations? That's point number 2 as far as the anatomy of decision making goes, because one leads us to massive transformation and out of bondage and pain, the other keeps us there. One liberates, one holds you back. A question that you might ask yourself: which makes you feel more fulfilled? All right. Which decision makes you feel better about yourself? Which one fulfills you? Which one is more creative and more fun? And which one is less fun and completely uncreative because you're doing the same thing over and over and over again? Another way of putting the question that you might ask yourself is, which choice, which decision serves you best? And if it feels to you like you're choosing from many options, that's absolutely fine. You can ask yourself which serves you the most. If you have 4 or 5 different things that you're attempting to choose from, really it's love or fear, but if you've got many things on your plate, which one serves you the most? So this process of transformation can be about prioritizing. It can be about narrowing the options down based on asking the right questions, based on asking a deeper level question of which one serves me the most. And then, of course, very importantly, once you have answers to that, then you can and must be willing to let the unserving behaviors go. Now, this could be an unserving job. It could be a habitual tendency in your life. Maybe it's a quickness to anger, for example. Right? If it doesn't serve you, you've got to be willing, once you recognize that something else serves you better, you have to choose the thing that serves you better. You have to decide in favor of what serves you. And this is something that can, in fact, if it seems complex, it's really not. It can become automatic once you get into the habit of it. And how do you get into the habit of it? By making a choice again and again and again. Okay, that is part 2 of the anatomy of a decision. And what I'd like to do now is we've got a very, very excellent question from a listener that I want to read out loud here on the air, and we will answer that because it's very, very good. Now, we often think that our decisions are tied up with other people, right? Because we're connected to people in life. We have work relationships, we have family relationships, we may have an intimate relationship. For example, we might have a partnership, and it often seems like our decisions need to be taken in context with other people. So here's the question. This question is from Tracy from Canada. Tracy, thank you so much for submitting this question. The question is, will a situation with another person change for us if we decide to end it and move on? Or are we entangled with them until they too learn the lesson from it? I'll repeat that. This question is from Tracy from Canada, who asks, will a situation with another person change for us if we decide to end it and move on? Or are we entangled with them until they too learn the lesson from it? Okay, Tracy, thank you so much for submitting this. This is great. And I thank you for submitting this, because I know that there are people out there listening right now that are wondering the exact same thing. Okay, now let's take the example of a relationship here. Let's say that you want to end a relationship, for example, and move on. All right. Will that situation change if you decide to end it? Well, if you decide to end it, then yes, it will change, of course, right? Because you're making a decision that on some level or many levels, this no longer serves you, and that you are going to do things differently from now on, starting with moving on in your life, whatever that may look like. And there's two parts to the question. The first one is, will the situation change for us if we decide to end it? Yes, absolutely. Or the second part of the question, are we entangled with them, with the other person, until they too learn the lesson from it? This is where a lot of people can waver, they can struggle, and especially in the context of an intimate relationship where people may have poured their heart and soul into the relationship and invested many, many years, in certain cases, into a relationship that now seems to have run its course. And there's a new season approaching. A person is making a decision. This can apply to a job, of course. It can apply to any situation that we may find ourselves in life. So here's the thing, is that you're not, if having made a decision to move on, you're not entangled with the other person in the same way at all. Your lessons are your lessons. The other person's lessons are their lessons. And will you two be learning different things? Yes, almost certainly. And how can we say that? Well, you're having two very, very different, fundamentally different experiences. So you may still, in the context of ending a relationship, have a future relationship with the person. You may work together, right? You may be neighbors, and if you're in the situation where you're divorcing with children, you have children and a parenting plan, a custody and parenting time arrangement to manage, for example, which means that you continue to have a relationship with the other parent. That's just one example. Perhaps there are people out there that have experienced that would know, okay, yeah, this is true. There's a continued relationship because we've got to continue communicating about the kids. Okay, and if that's not the case, the other person's going to have their lessons to learn, which may be very unrelated to yours. So if you decide to end it and move on, yes, your situation can and will change, and if you've already made the decision, then it has changed substantially. And you do not, you can actually choose, I would say, to not become entangled anymore. A decision to move on breaks entanglements. It breaks entanglements on many different levels, especially emotional entanglements. These are the ones that cause people in this example situation to waver and to think twice and to possibly stay in a very, very unhelpful, possibly even an abusive relationship for a long period of time, much, much longer than is good for them. So having made the decision that it no longer serves you and you'd like to end it, you're not entangled until they too learn from it. You can break free, and their own lessons may take them several years to learn. And we can all look at examples of people that seem to never learn the lessons, and how can we tell? Well, they continue to indulge in the same type of behavior. If it's a relationship context, they tend to attract the same kind of partner, or they tend to indulge in the same kind of degrees of behavior that's not helpful, whether it's manipulation or abuse or control. Whatever it is, we all see examples in life of people that don't learn their lessons. And why do they not? Well, they haven't decided to change. They haven't made the decision to do it. So Tracy, thank you very, very much for submitting this question. And I would also like to add that I love to read listener questions here on the air, on the show, and my email address is the best way to send those to me. That's tomas@tomasgarza.com, or if we're connected on Facebook, you can always send me a message. Next week, we'll be talking about small steps that you can do, practical things that you can do to sustain massive transformation in your life. So any questions that you might have, it's tomas@tomasgarza.com. And when we come back from the break here, we'll take a short commercial break. We'll look at elements 3 and 4 of the anatomy of a decision. We'll be right back.
Free your mind with Om Times Radio, IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free, ascendinghearts.com.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on Om Times Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Hi, I'm Tomas Garza, host of Decide to Transform on Om Times Radio. Thank you for listening. You know, there's only so much we can cover on a 1-hour show. If you'd like to hear further from me, I happily offer personalized teachings. Get your very own voice recording or book a one-on-one consultation. Ask a burning question and gain clarity on achieving massive transformation in your life. Details available on my website, tomasgarza.com.
I am Fidel Mshombo. I was born in a city called the Bukavu in the Congo. We were a loving family, and then, boom, everything that I had disappeared in a single day. People think that when you are a refugee and they resettle you to America, and all your problems are done. They don't understand that that's the beginning of everything. I was not born a refugee. I was made one.
It's time we welcome refugee families with open arms. Learn more at embracerefugees.org, brought to you by the Ad Council.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. You're listening to Decide to Transform on Om Times Radio, and I'm your host, Tomas Garza. Before the break, we took some really interesting general and specific questions from listeners about decision making, and we've looked at parts 1 and 2 of the anatomy of making a decision. So to recap, part 1 is making a decision blocks off other options. In other words, it takes the unhelpful stuff off the menu. Part 2, every decision is really the choice between two things. It's between love or fear, or it's between our own growth, our own expansion, or our own limitation. So I invite you to consider those two. We'll cover now part 3 and part 4. I almost said they're options. Well, actually, they're not options. They are part of the anatomy of a decision. So part 3 has to do with creation. We're creating our own lives. We're creating our lives whether we appear to be on autopilot or not, like we talked about earlier in the show. People running around like zombies that barely seem to be thinking, and you wonder sometimes what someone is thinking, correct? You sometimes wonder, gosh, is this person even breathing? Are they aware? Are they conscious? Well, they're clearly breathing, but they may not be super conscious, and they may not be self-aware of what's going on or what they're doing because they're acting out of habitual tendencies. But really, we're creating our lives, even if we're in that trance-like state, we're still creating, because even then we have the power of choice. That's one of the beauties of life and being alive, is that we have the power to choose right now a different path for ourselves. If something has not served us, we have the power to choose something else. And we have the power to say, okay, thank you, you've served me well, if you have, right, to our old way of life, to our old self, but we're going to be doing things differently from now on. It's powerful, and we all have that power. You have it. You get to create, and you get to choose your life. You don't have to, you get to. We all get to make different decisions. And our decision, making a decision, unleashes our creative potential. As we've seen in element number 1 of the anatomy of a decision, it blocks off the negative options. And in my book, I like to call those our limiting stories. And those are, again, things like I'm not good enough, I'm too old, I'm too young, I don't have the time, this just isn't for me. Right, I went to a gym a couple of times, or I went to a couple of yoga classes and then I stopped. It's just not for me. Okay. Well, what I would say to people is only you know if something really isn't for you, or if you are, in fact, too old or too young. On that one, you're not too old, you're not too young. We get to create and we get to choose our own life, and the choices that we make, we'll see happening. This is how we create, is we make a choice right now in the present moment, and then we show up differently. Pretty soon, life shows up differently, things look differently, there's transformation going on. We're creating our lives, and our future experience is the result of today's decisions. You can sit here right now, today, and lament decisions that you made or didn't make in the past, but that's the past. When are you experiencing that lamentation? Right now, in the present moment. And on the other hand, you could think about decisions that you're going to make in the future, maybe next week, maybe a year from now. When are you thinking about that? Right now. So the choices that we all make, the decisions we make right now in the present moment, actually create our lives, and our experience begins to unfold as a result of the choices that we make right now, today, in the present moment. This, I hope, for everybody, will be very, very empowering, and I mean it to be, So if you catch nothing else from this entire broadcast, pay attention to this. Life does not just happen to us. We create it. Life does not just happen to us. We create it. We're active. We're actually in control. May not feel like it at the moment, but how are you going to react to a situation that you're facing right now? Maybe you're listening to this show live and you have a sales meeting this afternoon with people that you don't want it to deal with. Maybe an unhelpful boss, a colleague. Just don't have a real good feeling about it. Well, what you do have power over is not what somebody says at the meeting or someone's bad joke at the meeting. It's how do you react to that? What do you do? Life does not just happen to you. The situation that you are in right now is the result of choices that you made. Now, you may have made some of those based on your habitual training, on your conditioning, right? On past conditioning. Maybe it was values or beliefs that were instilled by your parents, by society, by family members. Maybe it's a person that you were in a past relationship with. But it doesn't just happen to you. We're all here based on the choices that we made. And the good part, the great part, the liberating part is that we get to choose differently. We get to make different conscious choices in our lives. So life does not just happen to us. We create it. You're creating your life. That is Anatomy of a Decision, Part 3. Very powerful stuff here. Part 4 is a decision fuels action. It has to do with action. Not making a decision and dabbling in something has limited action, but it's not sustainable. An actual decision fuels action. Why? Because it requires action. A very important point. This is an action verb. There's a reason why my latest book is entitled Decide, and there's a reason why this podcast is Decide to Transform. Because we could decide to stay the same, right? It's a decision. We could decide to stay broke if we're broke. We could decide to stay lonely if we're lonely. We could decide to stay in an unhelpful, damaging relationship if we're in an unhelpful, damaging relationship. If it's a physical consideration, if you want to lose weight, you could decide not to, or you could decide to. You could decide to stay sick, or you could decide to heal. Now, there are many things that we can decide to do, and this is part 4 of a decision. It fuels action because it requires action. How often? Well, once is not enough. Let's take the example of joining a gym and committing to a gym membership for overall physical fitness. If you make that decision once, excellent. But the limiting stories will have less power over your life, but you will find that every day is different. Next week, you may have a cold, like I do today. You may have situations where you're not feeling very good emotionally or physically. Every day is going to be different, and you'll find that you have to show up again every day. There's a process in transformation about recommitting, and we find that making a decision to do something once is very, very good. Yes, but we find that we have to continually recommit to that because those limiting stories don't just go away. If they're less frequent, that's ideal, that's perfect, but they may come back, and they may come back to harangue you, they may come back to whisper in your ear and try to get you back to where you were before, wherever that is in the gym membership arena. Maybe they'll try to get you away from the gym and back to the couch or back to bed. And so there are some days, don't get me wrong, where you want to stay in bed. You just wish that you didn't have to do any of this. Recommitting to a decision is very important because it requires action. You'll always be presented with a choice. And you get to choose. So you get to choose yet again and again and again. So a decision it's a declaration of intention. Right? You intend, you want to do something. It's a declaration of intention, and it's official. This is what separates it from just a dabbling kind of choice of, I think I'll go off and maybe try this. A decision is not try. And this, what comes to mind is Yoda from Episode 5 of Star Wars, where he is sitting there talking to his young apprentice, Luke Skywalker. This is The Empire Strikes Back from long ago, right, the early 80s. And Yoda says, do or do not. There is no try. I won't try to replicate his voice because my cold will kick in and I'll lose the voice. But yeah, do or do not. There is no try. That's Yoda. Right? It's Star Wars. And it's so true. It's true because a decision is a declaration of intention. It requires action. If you're going to try to go to the gym, that's not a decision. See what I mean? You may go once, you may go twice, you may go 3 times, and then the first opportunity that you get to go drink beer with your friends or to stay in bed because you just don't feel like it today, then you'll take that opportunity if you're just dabbling, right? If you're just trying. However, if you've made a decision, you've made the decision to do. It requires action, and it's official. That official component is what takes those unhelpful stories off the menu, or at the very least, it limits their volume. And if you find yourself making a decision again and again, you will find that those limiting stories do not come up. And some of you may have found in a transformative process in life that they don't come up at all anymore after a certain point. So something that I always want to have people bear in mind is, what do you want to decide on? Everybody today has got to be, because we're all breathing, right? We've got to be thinking of something that we would like to have in life. Maybe it's spiritual growth. Maybe it's better physical health, a better relationship, right? A different work relationship. Whatever it is, there's something that we each want. And if we haven't decided to do it, or to get it, or to have it, then we'll listen to our limitations. A decision is official. It, number one, blocks off the other options. Number two, because there's only a decision between 2 items, it's a decision's choosing in favor of transformation, unless you decide to stay put, and that's a whole other ballgame. Still a decision, right? And we've seen also that making no decision is making a decision in its own right, and it's the wrong one. That's always the wrong answer, is staying still. So whatever that looks like to get out of staying still is what we all of us, each and every one of us, needs to do. So make a decision on what it is that you want and take steps. Begin taking steps, however small those may be, toward that goal. You'll find that a decision blocks the clutter, and the more of the clutter that you can remove, the faster you'll begin to transform. The faster your life will begin to appear and look differently, and the much brighter and deeper and more profound your experience is going to be. Now, if that means more loving, it means more loving. If it means more abundant, it means more abundant. Decide, right? Decide to make massive transformation in your life and choose in favor of your own transformation instead of your own limitations. So next week on the show, we will look at small things that you can do to get out of the feeling of being overwhelmed, and things you can do, small steps, practical steps. We'll go through them one at a time to sustain massive transformation in your life. Thank you for listening. You've been listening to Decide to Transform. I'm Tomas Garza, and I'll see you next week, 10 Pacific, 1 Eastern on Om Times Radio. Have a great week.